Boop, doop, boop, boo. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am the Sensei, your griot, the teller of stories. And don't believe a word I say. This show is just for entertainment's sake. Nothing is true. It's all fake news. So don't believe a word I say. So how you guys feeling? Hmm? With everything going on, the Supreme Court, war in Ukraine, everything costing more and more to the point where you can't even eat or put gas in your car. Well, how is that? How's that doing? Hmm? Does that feel like, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? Is it that when you have to self medicate, when everyone around you is taking pills or drinking alcohol or smoking something, you know, you have to realize that tobacco, nicotine, most addictive substance there is, or one of them, affects the same little thing in your head that craves things like alcohol, and cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin. The one drug that doesn't hit that receptor is cannabis sativa. Right? Now, you can become emotionally, cannabis can be a crutch, but it really is the most healing plant on the planet. Most food, fiber, fuel. Why did it become a Schedule One drug? Because people like Mr. Hearst didn't want to use. He had all these trees in California. He wanted to make paper, right? Where hemp has been making paper, for thousands of years, and much, much, much better, right? Hemp is a plant you grow, and it regenerates the earth rather than destroys it. If you go on and on and on, there's plenty of people on the internet who can tell you a better story about hemp. But basically, it's also a food, and the other people who were against it was the cotton and corn kings, because you can make clothes out of hemp a lot easier than you can with cotton. I mean, it really is amazing. Cotton is a very difficult plant to turn into a fiber, whereas hemp lends itself, right? Food, the seed, you crush it up. It's more palatable, more amazingly diverse to make food than, let's say, soybeans. Soybeans is not really that great for you, but hemp is. It's a great protein source. And as an oil, you know, um, a lubricant, cooking, and a fuel, right? The first car that ever ran was run on hemp. First diesel, run on hemp. All you farmers out there should start. And hemp's a weed; it grows everywhere. Out there in the Midwest, it's all over the place along the side of the road. So I mean, you can't smoke that stuff, but you can turn it into fuel. So, um, but are we going after any of this? No. You know. Um, so it's interesting. This week is the 50th anniversary of the Nixon break-in at Watergate, and you have to realize that John Dean and McCord both worked for COG, you know, continuation of government. It is the you ever watched the movie Doctor Strangelove, and they were down underground in that room, and those people were making a decision to annihilate the world. That's COG. They're going to, when everyone, all the men there were no women there. All the men were told that, um, so when the war breaks out, every man who's down here in the bunker will get four women to procreate, right? So good luck with that. So that's the mentality of COG, right? You know, every movie that the director of Doctor Strangelove. He did Lolita and Eyes Wide Shut, and that's he was just a truth teller, and Full Metal Jacket, um, the one with Kirk Douglas about World War One. You know, um, and we're living all of this right in front of our eyes. And it comes at us like a fire hose. These events usually took 50 years between, but we're getting them every other day. And like I said, I've been talking about the big splat for 3 years, right, before anybody really was talking about it. And this buddy in Australia says, the fact that nobody watches this show is a good example that I am doing my job. And now people don't realize that before I go on air, I put a shamanic edge to this, in meditation, and bring it to you, right? And so it goes, I'm like that little pebble in the pond of the World Wide Web, and it's going out there. So, to be short and sweet, because I don't have too much battery. This little laptop doesn't have as much battery as my big laptop. Makes sense, right? So I have to be close to the vest and straight to the bone. So here we are. We're having this war, right? And now this war started back in the 90s when Russia, the USSR fell apart, right? And we went to Mikhail and said, listen, we want to unify Germany, and we split it up for a reason. We put half of it behind the Iron Curtain because Germany, was the instigator, and just like Russia's the instigator, but was forced to be the instigator of World War One and World War Two to change the world dynamics, the economics. World War One was to destroy the Persian Empire, right, and Russia as an empire by the Tsar, right, the Tsarist Russia. And it was handed over or put into the hands of the Bolsheviks, which were, the loyal opposition. You have to realize that Mr. Rothschild, Lord Rothschild, took Marx and Engels out of a German jail and brought them to London, where he paid their bill for the rest of their life, put them up in a nice big house for their wives and kids and everything, and gave them a rich life. And they wrote Das Kapital and a number of other things, which gave economic and social and philosophic motif to the to be the loyal opposition to capitalism, because communism was ill-fated economic system from the beginning, and it was done up, and it only lasted as long as it did because the Western corporate interests. And I would start, I use my handle, I call them the hidden hand. People go, ooh. So if you want to be more scholarly, call it unipolar transnational oligarchy, fascist oligarchy. And you look the word up, fascism, basically was coined by Benito Mussolini in his PhD thesis. And he said that capitalism is where the political structure is controlled by capital. Socialism is when the economic, the money is control of the control of capital is controlled by the state. And fascism is where the state is not only controlled and owned, and not just controlled, but owned by the corporations. So in fascism, it's a corporate state. And capitalism isn't a corporate state because it's supposed to be competition. One corporation against another, and whoever does a better job gets it. But that's not what's going on here in America. I mean, right now, our legislators are the best money can buy. All the way from president down to the dog catcher. Everyone's on the take. And not only is everyone on the take, but everyone is blackmailed, right? Everyone has something to hide. And so, and the way you can not be in that space is be, without, so I'm experiencing, like, I'm, negative balance in my checking account. And when you own nothing, when you have nothing, um, you got nothing to lose, right? And so you can be that free and open spirit, of love's co-creation. Because if you're serving love's co-creation, you don't have to worry about how am I going to pay my bills. No, it works out. You know, and even though there's always something like PayPal is giving me a hard time, so I can't even use PayPal. And this year I have received through PayPal maybe $140. Like, I had to worry about that, pay taxes on that. Really, I live on $7,000 a year. You know, so I'm going to see what I can do about that. But I know nothing, and I can barely see. So it's hard for me to go, and I have no access to the internet unless I come to a place like this and hang on their Wi-Fi, right? So, first we had 9/11, right? And no, first we had a presidential election between Al Gore and George W. And basically, and George W. was a putz, the sop dog, right? And Dick Cheney was basically president behind George W., right? And he was, he had this company, Halliburton, that wasn't doing too well. And so once he became vice president, all of the no bid contracts went straight to Halliburton. Everything that was built in Iran and Afghanistan was done through Halliburton. So they went from almost bankrupt to being $1 trillion winners as they won the lottery. And so, how did we get George W. and Dick as our president? The Supreme Court decided it, right? There was no vote; it was Supreme Court. Al Gore won by a large degree, but because some chads and you know what chads are? It's the smegma off of a uncircumcised penis. So that's that was the mechanism of us getting Dick Cheney as president and Mr. Rumsfeld as vice president and leader of COG. And Rumsfeld and COG, COG was part of 1947, what do they call it? That's when they went from being the War Department to the Defense Department. And we had the National Security Act, and that was the end of America. I mean, you could say that end of America was the Civil War, and in 1876, when we passed H.R. 1876, that basically stated that corporations had more rights than individual people constitutionally. And that's always my example of if you want to have something in the government, it's like when the Supreme Court decided back in the 70s that women should have the right to do what they want with their bodies, right? That it's not the property of their husband or the state or the church. They should decide. Well, I kept saying to people, feminists, because I was involved in that a good deal, that the Congress needs to pass a law, because the Supreme Court can say, hey, women have the right to control their body. The Supreme Court can say the same thing, women don't have the right. So here we are. This is exactly it. So, I said that, how many years ago? So 20 plus 30 is like 50 something years ago. So anyway, and that will bring more disruption. So we've been living in a world of disruption. So it started back with National Security Act 1947, which basically made it a police, military state, and with the getting control of the Roswell technology, and if you go read Colonel Kurzweil's book, The Day After, or Roswell, whatever Colonel Corso's book is, pretty much puts it up pretty. And he was in charge of like foreign technology. Can't get any more foreign than. But end of World War II, Germany bombed into the Stone Age, but the Nazis won. A million high-ranking Nazis left Europe and went to South America and to the South Pole, right, and to the moon. They went to the moon in the 40s. Mid 40s, they went to the moon, right? So, and they discovered zero. They've rediscovered Tesla's technology of zero point energy and wireless transmission of current and gravitational. Brown's theories on anti-grav and because they were not, they basically were not following Jewish science. I mean, they did not get restricted to anyone's. You got an idea, go for it, right? That was their attitude, and pretty much by 41, once they went into Russia, and they made a number of major military blunders, right? Because if they went into Russia just like they went into Western Europe. And they took over the Ukraine, they took over all the Baltics, they took everything that was the Russian Empire, not Russia, and then they went into Russia. And if they went up to a certain point, stopped, put a defensive line, and then went after the oil, that would have been it, right? Because the Russians did not have it together to, they had to take it. All of their major cities were destroyed. They lost 60 million people, and Russia, Stalin's way of dealing with failure was to kill whoever. So he imprisoned and killed some of his best scientists, technicians, and generals. Right. So, and when you have a psychopath like that running things, I mean, Joe Stalin, because Adolf Hitler was a puppet. He wasn't in charge, right? You can tell that right off the bat by reading Mein Kampf, right? And because it's not, Adolf's story, it's a thesis, just like, Mussolini's thesis on fascism. It's a thesis on how to take over the world. And basically, what it states is you destroy a country completely, just take it apart, right? And mostly you destroy its culture, its political and economic structure. You take it to earth, right? There's nothing left of it. And then you go in, and who's ever surviving, you say, okay, you join our club, you survive. You don't, get a bullet in the head, right? And so you have to realize, when the Nuremberg rules came about, after the burning of the Reichstag, before the war in the 30s, right? So they basically made Jews, they put them in camps, right? And along with the communists and gays and you name anybody who was an enemy of the state, right? And didn't go along with the Teutonic, propaganda of the story of the state, right? That we're the chosen one, right? Very similar to what Israel's now thing, right? It's very interesting because the Anunnaki are the Aryans that the Nazis were looking for. Now, you guys won't like this, but the Hebrew nation is and they were never Jews. They were the Hebrew nation, the tribes, right? The Jews, that term came along when the Hebrew nation went from the east into the west into Europe. They had a lot of bling because they were always on the move, right? They were going from here to here. And the only thing they could take was their liquidity, so their bling, right? So all these kings who were having wars needed financing, and Rothschild was one of those guys, right? The Anunnaki, and he had all this bling, and he loaned it out to both sides. So no matter who won, he did, right? And the term Jew came from the, So what are you? Oh, I'm a jeweler, right? So now, don't believe a word I say. None of this is true, right? Go find out for yourself. It's pretty much there. You can dig around. You can be a scholar rather than a scholastic, just you know, mouthing the same line over and over again of the narrative of the corporate state. You have to realize, Eisenhower talks about the military-industrial complex. The real problem is it's the military, it's the banking, education, media, military-industrial complex, right? And in the unipolar world, the three legs of the stool is the Vatican owns your soul, the City of London owns your money, and the bully boy is the District of Columbia. These are three states inside of countries that have authority unto the world and unto themselves, and their home countries can't tell them what to do or what's going on, right? So, so we've been doing this for 20 minutes, and there's nobody here, right? So that's very interesting. And I got about another 30 or 40 minutes worth of battery. So, well, there's two of you there. So, anyway, so what's coming up next, right? So I've been talking about the big splat for the last 3 years. And so right where we are now, right? So there's this little country. Let's see if I have that thing. A little country that's right south of Poland. That's part of Russia. It's not a country. It's like a state of Russia. And it's surrounded by NATO. Poland and two other Baltic states are above it. And the rest of Western Europe is below it. It's right on the Baltic Sea, right? And they have a big chunk of their navy there. They have a big chunk of their air force there. They have a big chunk of really fast active missiles with nuclear warheads that can hit any of the capitals of Europe like within 5 minutes. Hit the button, boom. 5 minutes later, Paris is gone, Rome is gone, Scandinavia is gone. And when that country that was the corridor, they had a corridor train line that went from this little country into Russia, right? So Poland's back door is against Russia, and it faces this little chunk, which is super duper like hornet's nest of Russia's military. And I think it's Latvia and with two other Baltic states right there. So their back door is right on Russia, and this hornet's nest is on their south. So if Vlad of Russia wanted to, he could, start making a lot of. First of all, he has his navy there. He could blockade the Baltic Sea, so shipping couldn't get to Poland, right? And he could also block whatever access of fuel that goes right through that little chunk of Europe. That's Russia. You know, he could make a lot of trouble. And then he could actually, after blockading Poland and these other two NATO states, he could attack them from the north and the south. And they really couldn't do much, right? And they had this big air force with anti-aircraft. So NATO's air force couldn't come to Poland's, they could use tactical nuclear weapons because Poland, these other two NATO Baltic states, their military is very centralized, meaning it's in a place that's very vulnerable. They don't expect to be attacked, so they're not really spreading it out. And they're not that Poland's big, but the other two aren't. So they could, with a very judicious use of tactical nuclear weapons, could wipe out Poland and the other two NATO states' military in a day. Not by attacking it with tanks, but taking it out with tactical nukes, right? And Russia could say just the same thing. We saw this as an existential threat, and we didn't attack the people. We just attacked, this existential threat. Now we've taken it away, and we're offering everyone in those countries to become part of Russia, and it'll be all hunky dory, just like they're doing to the Ukraine. And so, what would we do? And then they say, if you, attack that little postage stamp of our military right there, we will instantaneously obliterate every capital in Europe, and then we'll go after DC and LA and New York, right? And then what will we do? And so, we're going to send, if you attack us in any way, we will send, 20 nuclear missiles, and that's it. We won't go after your big population centers. We won't go after anything except command and control. And if you come after us, that's when all hell. They got enough nukes to obliterate the world, right? Really, all it takes to kill everyone on Earth is about 100 well-placed nuclear missiles. Like if China and Pakistan went after each other with the 50 or so nuclear weapons, they would throw enough dirt, radioactive dirt, up into the troposphere that would give us, forget global warming, we would be one big ice ball. We'd have nuclear winter. I don't know if you've heard that term. We'd have that, right? So we have said, okay, we're not buying any oil or gas from Russia. We're going to blockade that. Well, they're selling it to China and India, and they're charging, even though they're giving a break on the price, they are making 10 times more money on their oil and gas than they did before the attack. So this made great business sense. They're making 10 times more money, right? Like close to, $2 or $3 billion a day, right? But so is Exxon, so is Shell, so is Chevron, so is BP. Their profits are through the roof, right? The next thing that Russia exports isn't wheat and fertilizer. It is gold, and that gold that Russia pumps out into the rest of the world is liquidity that everyone makes a joke about being economically solvent. So we're not allowing them to pump that gold into all these Western economies. So what does that mean? That means like by Christmas, basically, or maybe even before November, before the election, before the midterms, the dollar will collapse because there's nothing. I mean, 80% of the currency that's in circulation was printed, since 2017, right? Meaning we have been printing a crap load of currency, right? And just pushing it out there with 0% interest. And of course, the stock market's gone through the roof, and the economy looks fairly. There was, with the pandemic, there was people were stuck in their house and they couldn't do anything, and so they had a pent up demand. And so, of course, it's a big demand, and so our economy took off like a racehorse, right? So, I mean, all of these things were done on purpose. Nothing is organic or natural, you know. So, we're looking at even weirder crap coming down the pipe, right? Nuclear war, but limited nuclear war. And you go read, Proceedings, which is basically number one military journal put out by the U.S. Navy, right? And there's another journal published by the U.S. Army War College, another one by the Air Force, and another one by the Marines, another one by Delta Force. And the Council on Foreign Relations, they have one, and so does Trilateral Commission, Club of Rome. All of those guys have these journals, and they have all these scholastics telling you what it is, right? And these are all the same guys who said that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. So, LBJ was put, Jack was whacked because Jack, see, when Donnie goes, the election was stolen. Well, every election is stolen because you never have a choice, Look at the people who, in the Democrats, there is an election that they can't lose, right? And so Bernie Sanders was filling football stadiums with, people who wanted him to be president. Hillary Clinton couldn't even fill a high school basketball gym, right? But, she was made president because Hillary Clinton was the one Democrat that you know Donald Trump could win. If he was against Bernie, he would have lost like anybody else. He would have lost, right? And so he was put there, and for 10 years he worked for GE as a game show host called The Apprentice, and he was being apprenticed to be president because all he said was, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired," and that's all he did as president, right? The one thing he did was, he gave something close to $20 trillion to the richest 4% of America. But one reason we're experiencing this inflation is that JoJo's first thing was the CARES Act, and he gave $40 trillion to the top 2%, meaning everyone got a $1,200 check, but the massive part of that went to the richest people in the United States and on the planet. So, and COVID's not gone. Yeah, there are all these variants flying around, and who knows what the winter one's going to be. And monkeypox. And don't believe what I say. Everything I say is for entertainment's sake. None of this is real. The only thing that is real is love's co-creation. The only thing real is love. Everything else is an illusion of the ego. And ego is a dynamic of our creation of our avatars, meaning this body that you're in. You aren't your body, right? You aren't even your soul. Your soul is just a server taking the experience up to your Akashic record. So your super conscious mind, your spirit, and your spirit is part of the great maker. When the burning bush was talking to Moses, and he said to Moses, Moses, you got to go to Egypt and free the Hebrew tribes, not the Jewish people, Hebrew tribes. Right? And in the conversation, it wasn't, their oppression wasn't the Egyptians, because, the Hebrew tribes, they weren't like slaves and like cleaning out the toilet and doing that kind of stuff. No, they were middle managers. They were bankers, doctors, Indian chiefs, right? And they were living high in the hog. They had slaves, right? And they were carrying out, the Egyptian pharaoh's wishes, right? In the administration of his government. And so, the guy with the magical coat, he was, the pharaoh's number one boy, and he was a Hebrew. Anyway, so Moses would go, why should I? And he goes, well, because you're interested in this, and you have stick in the fight emotionally, and I'm going to tell you something you want to know. And Moses said, what is that? And the burning bush says, I'm going to tell you what my name is and what I'm doing here, right? And so in King James, you get the answer. The burning bush said, I am who I am, right? Well, only Popeye says that. Boop, boop. What the burning bush really said, I am a work in progress, and you, meaning Homo sapiens sapien, you humans, are my mirror. I look at what you do, and I can see my reflection of what I'm doing. And we're a work in progress. We are an entity of co-creation in love. That's what we are. That's our work in progress, to create love on earth. And even the Garden of Eden wasn't that. That was like more like Sam's Club. Everyone kind of was there because they were getting a good deal. Right? And so anyway, there's still no one watching this. And it's 34 minutes and 34 seconds. And how much time do I have left? About another 30 minutes. But, and what time is it? Oh, it's noonish. Okay. Let's see if we can raise somebody. Let's call the canary in the coal mine. See what he's thinking about. So his last show was about aliens, right? And that they were the do, 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 do. Let's see if he answers. Oh, Aunt John is someone I love dearly. He's my friend. And you don't give up on your friends. And, I mean, that's part of what life is about, is to be able to be open and friends to all. And that's, what's interesting about Islam. Islam's foundation is based on hospitality.
Please leave your message
No,
for.
he's not there. No, that's all right. So, what can I say? Oh, so I don't know. Today is Wednesday. Tomorrow's the 30th, the last day of June. Friday is the 1st. So, and I have, like I said, negative $7 in my bank account. So I may or may not have a half a tank of gas. So I have to be judicious with that. I'm doing a bunch of errands right now, and I'm going to go start visiting churches, especially the evangelists, and see what they're going to do with all of the women who can't get abortion. How they're going to help them. How Christian are they going to be? What kind of outreach are they going to have? So I'm going to go and talk. There's about 10 churches I know that I can. I know where these guys live too, so I'm going to knock on not their church, but their front door, and have a nice little conversation with them, see how they do. Right? And I've already talked to a number of people within those congregations who are kind of realizing, oops, this ain't going to be good, because there's going to be 2 million women who are going to be between a rock and a hard place. And most of the people in America who get abortions aren't like teenage girls who've been loose with their goose, but basically women who have children, and one more kid is going to crash and burn their whole family. And so the only and there is no, in the United States, we are the richest country in the world, and we have no safety net whatsoever. And there was more of a safety net in the 50s than there is today, right? And so, and I'm talking from experience. I'm a guy who has no safety net, and I'm walking on the high wire, and my safety net is God's unconditional love and Jesus's unconditional forgiveness, right? And I, in every day and every way, take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Take that nice breath in. Fill your lungs with the prana of love, of God's unconditional love. In through the nose. And when you breathe out, eliminate all that anger and fear and self-loathing. And what is that? But Jesus' unconditional forgiveness. Right? And we all have extraneous thoughts, right? And whatever bad thought pops into your head, just let it go. Just let it not be there, because you can replace it with the thought of, what would Jesus do? That's a great line. I really, really use that. And I don't do it in a hypocritical way that so many Christians use. I actually, I spend a good fifth of my day in self-reflection. That's basically what this show is. It's a stream of consciousness of my self-reflection, right? And I am being showing by example, being my best self. Right? Now, I'm a moron like everyone else. I'm a bloke who likes to have a good time, But first and foremost is my dynamic of trying to serve love's co-creation. And that's what I'm here to do. Right? Not to, lots of, when I, 2004 to 2014, I took my skill set and amortized it in the corporate world. And at that time, it was a very amortizable thing. I made a lot of cash. Right? And I had a good accountant, and I, and it was a good flow in the sense of acquisition of finance and physical bling and stuff. Right? So I never had to worry about that, and I didn't have to work that hard. The first 2 years I worked, I didn't even work half as hard as I did as an electrician. I didn't do any physical work. I just kind of traveled around and negotiated things. And yes, I that first year I probably worked just 52 weeks. I probably worked 30 weeks, right? I made a big chunk. Right? Then I went to my good accountant and said, okay, you're gonna have to pay this much in taxes, which I paid, and he gave me all these things I could write off. And he was really good. I didn't know anything about it. He took everything. He took all the everything, right? And so I just gave him all my receipts. Right? Like he said, keep all your receipts. I kept all my receipts. He put them all down. He did that. And then he said, well, the next year make half as much, which I did, which wasn't hard. So instead of working 30 weeks, I worked about 20 weeks, right? And I made a little bit more than half, right? And then the next 8 years, I stayed under a certain amount. And so I could write off pretty much everything as a loss because I didn't make as much as I did those first 2 years. And so that was fine. I, you know, adhered to the letter of the law. And that's what the law is. It's not about justice. It's about adhering to the letter of the law. And corporations do that. It was written, they write the law. Right? So there is no justice there. There's no following. I was talking to this guy who thinks, because he held a sign up and someone took a picture of it that he's changed the world. He might have had some influence, but he doesn't really do anything, right? That he talks about this, that, the other thing. So what? It's no big deal. It's the same with me. So I do this show on a regular basis, and a lot of you like it and watch it, and a lot of you have gotten back to me and said, "Well, this really means a lot to me. It's changed my life." So that makes me feel good. But I don't see myself as an A-lister or even, as call people opinion makers or trendsetters. I've been that my whole life. I've been the dude my whole friggin' life, and I've had a lot of different careers, and pretty much every time, so when I started out being a scholastic, I kind of, because I was already a social activist and an artist, and that lends itself towards a sociological point of view. I was studying that, and I got within the first 3 years of that and being at Cornell. My boss, when I left Cornell, kind of flowed me into projects where I worked for people working on things. And I got a good buzz of a guy who's not a scholastic, right? He's not inattentive to any point of view. He's there to look at what's going on. And he will give you an opinion backed up by observation that will give you trends and threads of what's going on, which can give you the ability to make a well-placed decision. And at the very least, you can say, at least we had this guy over here looking at the other side, devil's advocate. Right? So, and one of the projects I worked on a number of projects, not just one, but a number of social projects that were heading towards legislation in Congress, right? And one was this thing called the STARS program, which for a cost of $50 a student could increase America's education ability by 80%, turning on people who would head towards college, be ready to really step up, no matter what socioeconomic or racial background they were. And that program was started before me, and I was put in there towards the last 4 years to build a protocol to collect the data to put in a PowerPoint representation towards legislatures, right? To show that, spending the money in a very focused way could really help societal outcome, right? You know, lower crime, increase health and wealth and prosperity for the whole country, right? Well, you know, my boss brought me along to give that. I wasn't the main guy. I had my little bailiwick that I went up and gave and I kind of my bailiwick was describing how we collected the data and what it meant, and these folks over here will tell you what it means, right? Anyway, so we did that, and we showed beyond a shadow of doubt if we did this program, basically what it was that our school systems were they in the from 1890 to 1950 they were amazing. They were top notch. They were best in the world. But from 1950 they were allowed to collapse. Right? And there's a whole lot of reasons. One of the reasons why it worked so well is that people were segregated. The black folk were segregated, and one of the non-expected consequences of segregating the black folk was that they were all in one socioeconomic group, and so they couldn't go to any other store but a black store, or a black business, black restaurant, black hotel, and so they were the seventh largest economy in the world. The first millionaire woman who made the money herself was a black woman. She had a cosmetic business. I forget her name, but she was the first woman, period. Not black, white, green, whatever color. She was the first woman to be a millionaire on her own because she had a segregated group of people she could go sell her product to. She had no competition. It's pretty, in America, if you can do that, you can be a millionaire. So, and that's really the only freedom we have is to do that. Right? In the high-tech world, building an app is your skateboard to being a millionaire, right? So we gave this PowerPoint thing to the important senatorial group, and they said, "Well, that's very nice because we showed that if you go into the worst city, town, county, crime-ridden, economic poverty, and you go to the worst neighborhood, to the worst school, to the worst classroom, to the worst kid, take that kid, pull him out of the situation, and you put him in a place where he or she has total support." Like I had this experience. I got murdered by a nun in the first grade, and then I couldn't speak, couldn't see, couldn't hear out of one ear, and that's why I can't really see too well. And I speak in a whole different way. I don't speak like most people do. I had to learn how to speak. Or until third grade, I didn't speak at all. So, and I was put in a sanctuary, a Maryknoll sanctuary. I was with like 40 Maryknoll scholars, right? Not priests and nuns, but scholars, and they were, offering their life up to Jesus' love, but they were scholars. Right? They all had their own, bailiwick, and there was a guy who was a linguist and a audio pathologist, and so he helped me learn how to speak. And there was another guy who was a hearing, and he helped me understand what my hearing was, and another one about my eyes, and another one dealt with my dyslexia and my all those alphabet things before they had a name. I had them, and all these people showed me that how you deal with it is not cry or see how I say cry, it's and complain or demand you be taken care of. No, you step up. And why do we fall down? So we can get up. And so I had all these problems, and instead of like, I said no, and I learned all these ways to get up, right? And that's why I'm the guy I am today. Right? So, but I had all these, you know, angels around me, like my godfather. Not my parents. My parents were like at a loss, and it was fine when my grandma took care of me for most of my from 0 to 6. And then I was with them from 7, 8, and 8.5, getting towards 9 is when I got murdered by a nun. And then I ended up in a hospital for about a year. I had this helmet that was holding my head together, right? And I was sent to the Marinol Sanctuary in Garden City, and I spent 2.5 years with them. So by the time I went to third grade, I was kind of pasted together, but I still had a worldview that no one had. After being murdered, after dying before I got murdered about 3 or 4 times, and having unconditional love my whole life, and exposure to a total psychopathy of American nuclear family, you know, I was good to go. And then I was put into a seminary. Then I had from third to eighth grade of an amazing public school system of how they got it right because they reinvented themselves because it was a very rural place that was soon to be a very suburban place. So they had no schools for all these kids who were coming. So they built a brand new thing. And while they were doing that, why don't we do it right? And so they had an amazing, like in sixth grade, I learned biology that you normally learn in high school, right? And learned the biology of reproduction, right? And in seventh grade, we learned about the sociological dynamics of that biology we had learned, um, and you know what getting pregnant meant, and how not to get pregnant. And we were shown not birth control or condoms or IUDs. No, we were showed the rhythm man because that was totally Catholic Church down with the rhythm man, and it works 89% of the time. All you have to do is know how to tell the time and read the day of the week. Right? And women, when they ovulate, because as soon as they could be a little girl, but if they're ovulating, they're a woman. You can gestate, you're a woman. And so when you ovulate, down in your hoo-hoo, there is this like it gives a discharge that is kind of mucusy. So when the boy is down there, or the girl, or anybody who's down there playing the hoo-hoo of your partner there, if it's got that little mucusy thing, you're ovulating. You don't stick Mr. Johnson in there. You do something else. You have fun another way. And there's loads of ways of having fun. Right? And so the other thing about men is that their swimmers are very sensitive depending on their blood type. One blood type, the swimmers like it warm. So you wear boxers. And so the boys swing in the breeze, get cold, it drops the sperm mortality by 90%. So those three things. You know how to read a calendar and know the time of day, and go down and see if the mucus discharge is there. And if the boy wears the right kind of underpants, meaning if the swimmers like it warm, you let them go in the breeze. If they like it cool, you wear tidy whities. Put those three together. I mean, that's how I have run for the last 70 years. Never got anybody pregnant. Period. Right? Now, we were taught that in sixth and seventh and eighth grade, and the social responsibility. We had not just social studies, but we were taught to be good citizens and what that meant to be. There's none of that, and our history wasn't out of a book. We were given. We had different slices of history, right? And we looked at not the history book, but we went to the primary sources. And yes, our professor, we would get, they would put together the information and we would go over it together. And then we would discuss what the worldview from that was. And, and not even in universities do they do that. And when I was in universities doing research work like this one, um, they would, and if I was there for, going to be there for a year or so or more, I would be, and I was never always there, but if I was there a lot and they got used to me being there, the administration would come to me and say, listen, Al, we need a guy to teach this, that, or the other thing. Will you do that? I said, yeah, $100 a class, a lesson, and give me an office. No problem. So they didn't have to go off and get a adjunct or a tenured profession or pay them insurance or do anything. It's just $100 a class and give me an office and access to certain resources at their university. And I taught that way, and virtually every single frigging department loses their mind. He's not using a textbook. He's going to primary sources. Oh my God! You know, he's not having tests or quizzes or papers. He's brought them up in work groups, and they're making their own textbook. Oh my God! So. And that's where we're standing. We're standing at where people, instead of wanting their children to be educated so they can be free thinkers for themselves, they're teaching them dogmas and bull crap that is just putting them by the eight ball. And baby, we've had, since Ronald Reagan, that's all we've had. And all of these guys are, there is no difference between, you go all the way back to FDR, and he saw everything he did. He kept making deals that were with the devil. And then, after, he saw all the data about the alien agenda and about the Nazis actually winning the war, he ate his gun. I mean, he didn't have a brain aneurysm. He blew his brains out, right? That's why he had a closed casket because his whole top of his head was gone. And so from him on, every president was hornswoggled, Harry Truman, and Harry was a 33 Mason. He knew what was going on, but he still went along, right? And then Ike, he was a general. He really knew. And so, what was his last thing when he left? Watch out for the military-industrial complex. If anyone knew about that, it was him. Then you had JFK, who lied to the powers that be, and he was going to die anyway. He had everything wrong with him. And so he decided, he was doing every drug in the universe. So, he did a ton of LSD while having sex with Marilyn Monroe and about 5 other girls every day. And he kind of decided, I'm going to go out. I'm going to die anyway soon. So I might as well really, go up against this, be my father's son, which is what he did. And when he made that speech about hidden societies and secret societies and how he was going to go after them, when the Treasury Department started printing money and he took the authority of printing the money away from, the Federal Reserve, which, has, the Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. It's a privately owned, stock-held corporation. It has nothing to do with you, the taxpayer. Right. And so I'm laying down some interesting truth here, and nobody's watching. We'll see how many people watch after a day or two. But I'm trying to put all the dots together for us because it's going to hit the fan in 4th of July. It's like Monday is 4th of July. And something weird ass, unbelievable, have no idea. And I'm saying, the aliens are going to land on the front lawn of the UN. Something on that level is going to occur. And then it's just going to be off to the races, right? You thought it was off to the races now? Forget about it, right? So I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, and the rich people who came and bought up everything and really started to destroy the place, they kind of left because they got bored, right? So they bought everything, and they basically were laundering money. And there's a place called Banner Elk, North Carolina, right on the border, right? Go take a look at that place. See its history in the last 50 years. Basically, a mob went in there with $40 million, bought up everything, and turned it into what it is now. They built all these gated communities and condos and all crap. And, they spent, and it was like they don't have gambling, but they have everything else. And so they built a fun little town where there was just a college and a hospital, and everyone. And they built a little airstrip so people can fly their little private jets in. And then they sold about 10,000 of these little condos and gated community sites. You know, they spent 20 million and they got 200 million in a 30-year period. And that's a sweet way to launder dirty money, right? And Donald Trump, he's a prime example. I mean, he made all his money on going broke. And he went, bankrupt a zillion times. And he never lost it. He made money, and everyone else who invested in him, oh, I'm a great developer. And not really. And just go down the line of all these people, the people in the Senate, the Congress, the presidents, everybody, and the priests. Look at the Catholic Church. Look at the, you know, look at the, Southern Baptist whoopie doo. I mean, I could tell you stories about, you know, Lynchburg, Roanoke. You know, Roanoke has 600 Christian churches. There's only two out of 600 that keeps the door open for poor people. And that is the Catholic Church up on the hill. That's a big, big, big church and a big, big, big organ. So there's always someone playing the organ, practicing on a big pipe organ. And there's a littler church down off of Franklin that is really a righteous. They have a little coffee shop that always stays open, and it's in the basement. They made it look like a log cabin, and it's always there if you're cold and you need a cup of coffee. Right? The rest, no, they're only open on Sundays and on Wednesdays to pass the plate. Right? And I spent a good 5 years trying to get those people to do something, and God put me in a church where this guy I knew. He was good looking. He wasn't ordained. He had no theological background. I had more background than he did. But they put him in there because he looked good. And they had a church, beautiful church, one of the oldest churches in Roanoke, First Christian Church, FCC, right next to Oakey's Funeral, between Oakey's Funeral and Red Cross on whatever street that is. And the back street was Luck. And anyway, that church used to have, 400 or 500 people in it, and was down to like 20 old folk. And they wanted to be remembered as, they didn't want the church to die. So they got this young guy, and he didn't have a clue. And so he just knew how to scam. He had a nonprofit that was a scamming entity. And so he goes, I want you to be my, community coordinator. I said, okay, what are you going to pay me? Nothing. I said, I got no place to live. Well, he took me up into the bell tower, and there was a closet. He said, you can stay here, but you can't, you got to be gone by 6 in the morning because that's when the old ladies show up, and you got to, not come sleep until 8, right? So, I did that, and I spun, and it had this big, big, big community room, right? A big kitchen with like 9-burner Garland stove, walk-in fridge, and they didn't do anything with it. And I met these 2 Jamaican ladies who made Jamaican food, and they wanted to have a restaurant, but they had no money. They didn't know how to get a permit. Blah, blah. I said, okay, walked them in that kitchen. Here's your restaurant. And it sat like 200 people, big, big 10-seat tables. And I started the No Fear Cafe, right? And it was nonprofit. So you gave a donation, right? And I went around with a bucket, and I put I made myself look like a French maitre d', and I sat, and I would seat, and it was right downtown. So it was right across from the courthouse. It was right across from City Hall, Channel 4, NBC, all at Federal Building, Carillion Hospital. And so doctors, lawyers, judges, policemen, because the sheriff's office and the city police were right across the street. And I knew all those people. I had them print, they had a nice Xerox machine, so I had them print up all these flyers, and I went and hung them up on their things. And we, that place was making $1,000 a day, right? And when I made the deal with the minister, I said, okay, they'll pay all the bills, whatever, they'll buy all the food, they'll pay, all the employees, all of that. And they'll run it through the church. It'll be nonprofit, and no taxes, no nothing. And they get 80%. And the expenses of running it, and whatever left goes to church. So basically they were making $1,000 a day, and they hired. It was the two old ladies at first, and then their daughters and their grandkids. But then they hired another. It was right. The mission was just down the street, so all the homeless guys, and I kept going, homeless guys, come in and have dinner. So I would sit a judge, a policeman, a doctor, a nurse, electrician, or whatever, and 3 or 4 homeless guys, right? And I'd sit there and get the conversation going, and then go sit more people, and I would do that, and then they'd come, and it'd be 3 things. You either order A, B, or C. You'd either have tea, lemonade, or coffee, and that was it. It became, and they were making a ton to go orders. I had them because they had a website, so I had them just make a little niche in the website, and the kid who worked that was really good with that, and so he put a printer in the thing, so would just print up an order, either from the dining room or to go, and so that's how they made $1,000 a day. And so they were like amazed because they were keeping $800 at least, and or more, and they were paying everyone. So I got all these homeless guys to be the choppers, the dishwashers, the cleaners, and getting them a job. And I took over a building that was kind of abandoned, and the mayor really liked it, so we took it over, and I took those guys and taught them how to swing a hammer and how to clean, demo everything out, and clean the thing up, and then put the wire and plumbing, and we were doing better than Habitat. So we took this big house, and those 6 guys had a job, and now they had a place that they could live in, and the mission went nuts because each head they were making $50,000 a head. So I didn't want anybody to stop being homeless. I just wanted them to go to the mission. So they had about 500 people a night that they were getting $50,000 a year for. And taking 6 of those people was like 100, 200, 250,000 out of their pocket. Hey there, Miss M.
Hi.
Hey, sweetie.
Can I get you anything right now?
Oh, no, I had my breakfast. What's for lunch special?
Country style barbecue ribs.
Ooh.
They're so good.
Yes, I think I'm going to have that.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a...
Fried potatoes is the special side today.
Uh-huh.
And then, I recommend coleslaw with it. I think it just would be
Yeah,
good
but
today.
I'm such a fan of fried okra.
Oh, really? Okay, so...
Fried okra. So the potatoes are fried potatoes. The okra,
Oh, okay. Thank
put it
you.
right up there.
Okay,
Just in case.
thank you.
You can take that.
Sure.
What else? Yeah, so that sounds good. And I'll have, so what?
And what, you want a roll or fried cornbread?
A fried corn.
All right.
Their barbecue is like so off the hook. Do they put it up on the sign today?
Fried potatoes, okra,
Oh, good.
and fried cornbread.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So how
You
you
want
doing?
it for here?
Oh, yes.
Okay, sure. I'm doing okay, except for I have an abscessed tooth and I look like the elephant woman right now.
Oh, so do I. So I had my eye
I
operated
was
on.
going to say, I am not a monster.
I remember that play.
But I'm just in for you.
Thanks, Em. Love you, baby. Yeah, she's greatest. I mean, that is the kind of person that inhabits the earth. Majority of people are like her, not like Dick Cheney or Rumsfeld or any of the other losers.
I think you can use that one.
I guess I'm staying a little longer. Taking my coat off. It was cold in here when I was the only one with the AC. Now people are coming in. So anyway, where was I? Oh yes, that church. So I kind of was rocking and rolling with who looked good, right? And every Sunday, the first Sunday I was there, I came in an hour because the old folks had the keys to the place. So they'd open it up and they'd be there 2 hours before anybody else, and they'd just be sitting in the church because they had no place else to sit. So, and these were, they had been well-to-do Roanokeans. And I came in, said, "Hi, I'm Al. I'm helping Tim, reorganize the church." And they're kind of looking at me like I'm a homeless guy. And I would talk to them and I'd listen to their stories and like rub their back. And, I know kinesiology, so I would hit a few points in their body and readjust them and think, "Wow, that feels good. Ooh, yeah. How about?" And by the second Sunday, everyone loved me. And by the third Sunday, an hour before, 2 hours before services, the old folks would show up. Somebody would open up the door and they'd all go up there. And but the hour before services, they had Bible teaching. And there's this woman who was like authoritarian, like a nun. And I just sat in, right, and listened and took notes. And then, after it was done, I said, after church, I'd love to talk to you about the Bible. And she said, "Oh, isn't that nice? Sure, I have nothing else to do." So I did. And I took all these notes and I showed her what she was saying in the Bible, what she was quoting. She was misquoting, taking it out of context, and not even. I said, "So, what do you think Jesus would think about what you said? And see what King James says, and see what you said, and what do you think?" And she first got really upset. "Who do you want this job?" I said, "No, I'm here to help you. You know, and the way why don't you be more like Jesus? Why don't you use that little term? What would Jesus do?" And when you're working on a lesson, instead of coming from your ego, from what you think it should be taught as, do what Jesus would do. Anyway, she actually did that, and it changed her freaking life. And everyone, "How did she become a nice person? She was such a monster." So, and so there is Miss M, who's got an access tooth, which is really painful. I mean, the worst kind of thing. You see her moaning and no. So, anyway, so what more can I say? Let's see how much time we got left. Well, we're getting down there. Got about 10 minutes left. Been doing this. Ooh, look at that. 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 15 seconds. It was 12. So, and there's nobody listening, no one commenting. So why don't you comment? Why don't you leave some comments of this, right? And I'll see you after July 4th, right? And it should be interesting. I shall speak to you after July 4th, and I'm gonna have to figure out about PayPal and all of that because it's like messed up. So and that just cuts my. I mean, I wasn't getting too much from you guys anyway, so I'll figure out another way to support. And a lot of you said, "Why don't you give us your mailing address?" So maybe I'll do that. I have a PO box. I might do that. So anyway, I'll be back on that. And remember, you can always get a hold of me at the dudewake42 at Gmail. Dudewake42 at Gmail. Pass this on. It'd be nice. I can never get above 500, and the algorithm would change, and other people would watch. So let's see. Let's try John Boy one more time. There he is. Let's see. We can get him on the line. See if he answers. We'll see how he's doing. Ah. It doesn't seem like he's here. Anyway, so I'm gonna go now. I love you all. Let's meditate a little bit, right? Here, like, and every day and every way take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into danger, but deliver us from evil. As was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without end. Amen. That's a good way to empty your lungs. Say that prayer all in one shot, right? And then breathe in the prana, the life force, right? And go, I've got more than 2,000. It says I have 1,400 shows, but I got more than 2,000 up there. So why don't you go check it out, see what I've done, what's up there, and I'll see you after the 4th, right? So tomorrow's the last day of June. Monday is the 4th. Maybe it's the 3rd. Yeah, Friday's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Yeah, Monday's the 4th. So after that, so sometime like Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll come on again. But not until then, because I really have no money to put in the gas tank. But because I was going to do a whole bunch of things, I came here to talk to you. Okay. Now my neighbor he's going to be busy with his place, so I'm not going to be able to go up on his porch. So I can't even do that. No. That's that. So okay, gang. Catch you later.